Leinster's bench helped them stretch away from Ulster. My name's Mark, let's talk rugby. Leinster picked a really strong bench for this one. The likes of Porter, Furlong, Sheehan, Snyman, Prendergast, all on there. And they really helped them bring this one home. But starting off, Ulster looked pretty good. Like Izuchukwu, who unfortunately had to go off for Ulster, one of many injuries they had tonight. And as always, any injured players wish them, a speedy recovery for any of the teams in this game, but also any of the teams that are playing this weekend as well. But Izuchukwu, he steals a Leinster line out, 10 metres out, and Ulster put pressure on before forcing a penalty. They opt for the scrum. They win a penalty at the scrum. Then they decide they're going to take the points. Jack Murphy makes it 3-0. Leinster then come forward. They've got space wide left in the 22. Then Henshaw, he looks to go back inside, but they knock on and, missing a little bit of accuracy early on. But Ulster are putting pressure on in defence. Leinster then come forward again. Soroka and Culhan with good carries. Then they go out left and Penny makes good ground out there. They come back into the 22 but knock on again as they were looking to offload the ball. But you can see they're trying to keep the ball alive and sometimes that leads to errors. Then they work it wide right. Ringrose offloads to Tommy O'Brien. He breaks the line, then chips the cover. I think it was Doak. And then beats him to the ball to regather and score. Frawley misses the conversion, 5-3. Lowry then injures himself in a tackle on Ringrose and he has to go off on a stretcher. Again, not going to go through all the injuries because Ulster had a ton of injuries, unfortunately, for them in this game. Leinster then come forward again from a scrum penalty, but Izuchukwu steals a line out. And it's the third time he's done it in the game. Leinster, really need to sort it out. Ulster kick it out on the full and they give them a good position in the 22 and a chance to actually fix that. Works this time because they go to the tail to Culhan and they work the ball up to the line. Forwards battering away and then Clarkson gets over. Frawley converts for 12-3. Then we have a great kick from Ulster and it's taken by Doak on the edge of the Leinster 22. Cooney shifts it inside to Izuchukwu. He just goes through a gap and has the pace to finish. Converted by Murphy for 12-10. And Ulster looking very competitive at this stage of the game. Leinster then, they go to the corner, last minute of the half. We have a Timo check as they go over in the maul. Dave McCann goes to the bin for collapsing the maul, and it's a penalty try. 19-10, and that was half time. And Leinster do it so often. That minute or two before the break and the minute or two just after the break, so often that they get scores. Then Leinster extended period of possession at the start of the second half. McNabney's leg knocks the ball out of the ruck as Cooney was about to kick clear from the start of the half, and Leinster they're in the 22. Ulster managed to push them out of the 22, but then Leinster finds space and Osborne comes, brings it back into the 22. Then they put it wide to Ringrose to score in the corner. We have a Timo check for a possible knock-on in the build-up, but it's all clear. Frawley misses the conversion, 24-10, and Leinster have the try bonus point at that point. Porter then not releasing as he goes after the ball at the ruck. Ulster kick the ball to the corner. Then Soroka gets pinged for collapsing and Joe McCarthy infringes as we play advantage. Leinster get a warning because of the number of penalties. Darren Mangan then goes to bin for infringing at the next maul/ruck for lifting the leg over the horizontal. Ulster then get free kicked for a dummy throw by Tom Stewart to the line out, and a really good chance gone. And it felt like at that stage that was any kind of competitiveness in the game gone for them, because, you know, they had a yellow card period, but they just couldn't come up with the goods. They do work it though back up to the line. They're going, you know, from the base, but Leinster just keeping them away off the try line. Then they get driven back a few meters, and then Culhan gets over the ball to win a penalty, and just great defence from Leinster. Stockdale then gets outside Tommy O'Brien, and Ulster coming forward again, but the scramble is excellent from Leinster. And then they come forward. Frawley puts a chip over the defence into the 22. Tommy O'Brien gets there first, bounces the ball, kind of eluding Cooney. He's surrounded by Ulster players, so he decides just to cross kick out to the right corner, and Sheehan gathers to score. Frawley misses the conversion, and we're at 29 points to 10. Ulster then, they come forward into the 22. Scott Wilson, he takes a pass from Treadwell, I think it was, but then he gets Jimmy O'Brien at the same time, and he knocks on the tackle. Big hit from Jimmy O'Brien there. Then we have Leinster. They disrupt an Ulster line out, and they move it into 22. They go wide right, and then they come back in field, and Prendergast puts Sheehan over to score. That's converted for 36 points to 10. Ulster then drive over from close range through Dalton after a great cross kick from Jack Murphy got Stockdale close. Converted for 36 points to 17. Bit of a Timo check, but everything's fine. Then finally, Dan Sheehan completes his hat-trick. Massive pressure from Leinster, defending Ulster in Ulster's 22, and clearance kick from Jack Murphy is just scuffed in his own 22. Leinster then move it from the line out, and it gets Sheehan free wide on the left, and over he goes. Conversion missed, 41 points to 17. Ulster did look to get the final score of the game. They even worked the ball within a metre or two of the line, but then they knock on, and that was the game. 41.17 was full time. So we're going to look at the stats and then talk about each of the teams. So let me pull the stats up here. Okay, so first on attack, 7 tries to 2 in favour of Leinster. And even though, first half Leinster not clicking all that well, they did make 12 changes to the starting team. But as they kind of settle down, the quality start coming through. And when the bench come on as well, they just went up another level, and Ulster couldn't live with them. And then, both sides defending well at the start, but Leinster, as the game went on, seemed to produce, apply more and more pressure on Ulster when they had the ball. Possession then 44 to 56, so Ulster were plenty of ball. Clean break 6 each. Defenders beating 24 to 35. So Ulster beating more defenders, but just coming out with the same number of clean breaks. Offloads then 10 for Leinster and 7 for Ulster. So you can see Leinster really are changing their game this season to an offloading one. Defence then, territory 41% for Leinster, 59% for Ulster. So Ulster were all the ball and in Leinster's half for most of it, but they couldn't put enough pressure on that Leinster defence, and eventually the mistake would come from them for the most part at least. Number of tackles then 137 to 132, so pretty even. Missed tackles 32 to 21, and tackle percentage 77% for Leinster is kind of, it's still a little bit lower than we expect from them, even though their scramble is so good. We'd expect Leinster to be maybe, a little bit higher in the 70s, like 79 or low 80s. Ulster, 79%, again, a bit lower than where we expect them to be. We expect probably Ulster to be kind of 82, 83%. And then turnovers 1, 3 for Leinster and 6 for Ulster. And Ulster, especially in the early part of the game, they were getting those turnovers. But, the thing is, against a team like Leinster, when you have that momentum with you, you have to get your scores, and you have to do it in an efficient way. You can't be spending 5 or 10 minutes, keep it going and going, and then eventually get over, because, Leinster are going to go up the other end of the field as they did in this game and get a score with maybe half or less the amount of effort that you put in to get your score. Thinking about the Leinster try that made it 12 points to 10, looked like they're really in the game, right? It took them a long time to get over for that. Then Leinster, just before half time, off the field, they get their score and make it 19-10 at half time, and completely change the complexion of the game for the second half. Then on to kicking. So 4 kicks retained to 5. Very competitive in the air between these two teams. Some really good operators there. And then penalties conceded 8 for Leinster and 6 for Ulster. So both teams staying in single figures, which, for this weekend, I've covered, this is the 6th of the weekend's URC games that I've covered. So I've only missed 2. And the reason why I missed 2 is because they're on the same time as other games. I probably would have watched all 8 and covered all 8. But of the ones I covered, the only time where both teams were in single digits, I think, for penalties. Most games actually this weekend, both teams were in double digits, like 11 to 12, 13, 14 penalties, whatever. And then rarely one team were in single digits, but both teams in single digits, a bit of a novelty here. So both teams staying clean for the most part, but there were yellow cards at the same time as well. So some big infringements in there. On to players then. So Dan Sheehan with his hat-tricks gets the most points for Leinster. And that helped the fact that Frawley was poor off the tee, and then Prendergast was maybe a little bit better, but still not perfect from the tee when he come on. And then Jack Murphy with 7 for Ulster. He looked a little bit frustrated at times for Ulster, but you can see there's definitely a lot of potential with that guy as well. So hopefully, Ulster stick with him. Obviously, his dad is the coach up there. So if he stays on, you would imagine that Jack will do well and flourish there as well in Ulster. Then tries Dan Sheehan with 3, got his hat-trick off the bench. Cormac Izuchukwu with 1. Glad he's on here because he was, even though he wasn't on that long, Ulster's certainly most impressive player of the night. Successful carry, sent 6 for Scott Penny. James McNabney with 8 for Ulster. Clean breaks, Jamie Osborne with 1 and Jacob Stockdale with 1. Stockdale really coming back to form as well. It's good to see from him. Defenders beaten, Jamie Osborne with 4 and Stockdale with 8. And then meters made, Osborne made 101 to Stockdale's 80. Offloads, Robbie Henshaw with 2 and then Stockdale with 2. Strange not to see Snayman up there when he was playing in the game, but he did kind of come on and then have to go off, and he had ice on his knee towards the end, or on his leg, not his knee, because he said originally they said it possibly a knee injury, which would be a big worry for Leinster, but then they said it was actually on his leg and it looked like he had a dead leg. Okay, onto the fence then. James Culhane with 20 tackles for Leinster, and then Tom O'Toole with 15 for Ulster. Tom O'Toole, one of those guys where, had a big impact a couple of seasons ago and looked like he really was going somewhere. And then he was, had a bit of a problem with injuries and stuff. Himself and O'Sullivan there up at Ulster, like 2 really useful props and great around in the loose as well. So it's good to see him back, and hopefully, he's going to stay fit. Then turnovers 1, Culhane with 1 and Warwick with 1 as well for Ulster. Okay, so let's talk about the teams. We start with Ulster. First half, as I said, they were competitive, but they couldn't prevent Leinster getting that score before half time to give themselves a cushion going into the second half. And in the second half, then they were under lots of pressure, both when they, in possession and in defence as well. And they defended a lot of work to get their scores compared to Leinster. Leinster they got into the 22 for the most part. Like Leinster made mistakes as well, but for the most part, Leinster got into the 22. They had their entry, and then they went through some phases, and then they'd spot a weakness and they'd exploit it, and they were over. Whereas Ulster were a long time trying to force their way over, and yeah, it's difficult when you're in that position against a team like Leinster that, you, as I said, you work your socks off to get your score, and then they make it look easy by replying to you. But a lot of positives from them. Hopefully Izuchuku was okay, because he was excellent. He's been excellent any time he's played for Ulster, and when he's got to play for for the emerging Ireland team as well, has looked really good. And for me, he's someone who's not going to be long. As long as he stays fit, that's the thing, right? If he can stay fit, injury free, then I think he's going to be in the mix for that Ireland back row, because he is a really, really big talent, I think, in there. He's kind of in the same mold as maybe a Ryan Baird, a player who he can get up, jump in the line out, very athletic though, and he has real pace about him too. So, but then also can do all the other, nuts and bolts of his job as well. The other things as well, the positives for Ulster, as I said, like Murphy is developing as a really good 10 up there. He's a young guy. He's going to take a few seasons to really, get a handle on things, but I think he's doing a great job. Then, the likes of Stockdale in form. Obviously the bad things are the number of injuries they had, like McCluskey injured in the warm-up, then tons of injuries through the game in backs and forwards for them, and they had both nines on the field for the second time, at least the second time in the last few games, due to injuries. So that's definitely, hope everyone is going to recover well from that. But then 9 is another issue for them, I think, in that, for next season. They know Cooney is leaving, and then Doak has been kind of in and out on form there too. So they need to have somebody else in there at 9 who can really push him and make sure that he keeps his standards up for them. But, as I said in previous games with Ulster, is that Ulster, they're looking good for next season to kind of, I think they've made progress certainly this season, especially in the second half of the season. And next year, you would expect that they'll take another step forward from there. Whether they can or not, obviously, it remains to be seen. Onto Leinster then, made a lot of changes, as I said, 12 changes. Looked a little bit kind of disjointed to begin with, but they got themselves together. They got themselves in the lead by half time, and then second half then, they kind of brought it home, especially when the bench come on, Sheehan getting his hat-trick, great impact from the whole, not just Sheehan, the whole front row, they come on as well, Porter and Furlong in there too, and, Prendergast coming on as well at 10, definitely had some impact off Fintan Gunn, who come on at 9, was decent as well. So plenty of good news. And then Deegan as well, coming off the bench too. So Snyman obviously will be a bit of a worry, because he's one of those players that this season has made a big difference in terms of the way that Leinster are playing, and in big games especially, he's had, a big hand in when Leinster are wobbling a little bit, just coming in and having massive impact from the bench, or if he's starting as well, just getting them, it's a solid platform for stuff. His offloading game, his ability to carry, etc., his ability to steal lineouts, disrupt mauls, that kind of stuff. So, he's going to be a worry if he's injured, but if he's okay, then, things should be looking good. And then you look at as well a lot of young players who are, getting chances to come in and play too. So you got like Turner come on off the bench as well. Then, Boyle and Clarkson were starting with Gus McCarthy in the front row too. Thought those guys did pretty well. You got Tommy O'Brien, who has forced his way into the starting 15, like for big games. I've said it before, in like last year or the last 3 years, he wouldn't have had a chance, no matter how well he was playing, to get into the first team, because it really felt like that they did kind of this kind of two camps within the camp kind of thing, where there was, this is the URC team and this is the team for the knockout stages and the Champions Cup. And there's not going to be any mixing really between them, other than, if there's injuries, there'll be call-ups, but nobody is going to force their way into the team. Whereas this year, we're seeing players being able to force their way in, and that's a big thing for them. But yeah, I think a decent win for Leinster in this one. At this stage now, you would expect that, well, you'd say from a long time out that they're expected to be number one seeds going into the playoffs. But I think this result now means it's going to be very, very hard for Glasgow to close that gap on them, with 3 games left to go. So it's getting to the stage now. I think if Leinster win their next game, it might be, depending on bonus points and stuff, but it might then be mathematically impossible for Glasgow to actually overtake them. So that will be good for them. But for Leinster, being number one seeds is not the goal. They're hurting by the fact that they've been number one seeds going into playoffs, and then they lose at semi-finals, in the URC. So they want to correct that. They want to at least get to a final. Obviously, they want to lift the trophy, but even Leinster can't just turn up into the knockout stage and expect to progress all the way through. That's how competitive this league is. Like, once we get down to knockout stages, they've got to find that extra step, that extra gear, because other teams will lift their game, and we haven't seen that from Leinster before. It seems like they're gearing up to be able to do that this year, but whether they can deliver or not, it remains to be seen. But decent game here. Ulster again looking good for next season. Leinster looking good for this season, but there's still plenty of rugby left to play until titles and stuff are decided. So Leinster may be top of the league, but we've seen 3 years on the bounce. That matters absolutely zero when it comes to actually winning the trophy.